What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com. My name is Sean Sheehan, and today I'm looking ahead to One Fight Night 17, the last of the big One Championship Fight Night cards of the year. They have a few of the Lumpini shows coming up as well, and they also have a couple of shows already announced for next year. Unlike most places, I suppose, aside from the UFC, we have a few dates and we have a few things to look forward to with One Championship, but I'm here to concentrate on One Fight Night 17 today. But also I have another couple of things to talk about just before we get into it. So this is a full Mauy Thai card, and usually I'm here doing the MMA, but there's a few names we've seen on some past cards, and I'll go through some of the Mauy Thai fights here and give a breakdown, I suppose, on them. But there's a couple of bits of news. Now, I will have a One Championship year in review towards the end of the year, so look forward to that, and I will look ahead to next year as well, as I will with the other ones. If you saw any of my year in review shows last year, you'll know what to expect from that. So we'll talk more about maybe the future of One Championship and the last year of One Championship in that. But there's two things I just wanted to touch on here quickly. Chachi did an interview with a news outlet, I believe it was in China. I think it was called South China News, if I'm not mistaken. I had it up here in front of me 2 seconds ago, so let me just find it again. South China Morning Post, that's what the place is called. And he said they'll be going more back into MMA next year. Now, I've covered all the big One Championship cards of the year, and I've really enjoyed, as I've mentioned multiple times, the mix, I suppose, of MMA, Muay Thai, kickboxing, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But there was a kind of a feeling out there from a lot of people, and I didn't really feel it up until this card now, let's say, but that they weren't doing enough MMA. And I suppose looking back at it, I can understand that, especially looking at this card where there's no MMA. That's definitely fair, and it seems like Chatri's kind of listened to that and has decided to do more MMA next year. It talks about other plans as well, which we'll get into I suppose in that other show, but going into Japan, doing a show in Qatar. They're talking as well about going to Europe and going to the Middle East more as well, so that's exciting times. But I suppose the most exciting thing for me here doing the previews and the people who listen to previews is more MMA fights and getting more MMA in One Championship next year. And it's not like that we've had, a lack of MMA or anything worldwide or even in One Championship. There's been some very good MMA fights, but it's good to hear that the strategy going forward is still MMA, and that, it's not going to be all Muay Thai, it's not going to be all kickboxing or anything like that. So that is very good for MMA fighters out there. They'll have another place. We just lost one place where people could go because of obviously the Bellator and PFL have aligned and merged. So to have somewhere like one where, Dmitry Johnson is and has been for the last few years, or Eddie Alvarez was, or Roberto Soldic was able to go, and other people in places as well, is fantastic. And when I say people in places, I mean fighters, and places, I mean, maybe they'll come to Dublin, maybe they'll go to London. Maybe they're obviously doing extra shows in America, and that's great for the fans. That's great for, I suppose, the sport worldwide. And, also, I suppose I must say the best, sometimes we lay out plans in MMA, whether it's me covering it or our fighters, our promotions, and they don't necessarily happen. We heard Mike Hogan talking about him this week. He reckons it's, One Championship are going to struggle over the next year and stuff. And when we heard, I suppose, the same happening with Bellator, I think a lot of people are like, oh no, and I suppose I'd be the same. I would hope that's not the case. I would hope that they survive. I hope they get an extra round of funding or become profitable. I think Chatri was talking about becoming profitable as well. So you never know, you never know the truth of all these things, I suppose. But at the end of the day, and maybe that's a better discussion for the business podcast, but as me, as someone who loves mixed martial arts and combat sports, I would hope they all survive. I hope we can go forward and have more fights and have good fights, because I think probably the best thing you could say about One Championship is their matchmaking is, like, I think pretty good. They always put on fights that I wouldn't complain about, and that's rare enough. I love a bit of complain about certain fights, and even like thinking about fights happening over the last couple of weeks or over the next few weeks, or the last couple of weeks, mostly because obviously we're coming up to the holiday season here. it's not always the case, you know, and I do think One Championship do a good job of that because, the small enough MMA roster, I suppose they have signed a lot of lads at the same level. So maybe it's not that it's easier, it's probably wiser the way they have actually put their squad together, I suppose. So very interesting. We'll see what happens with that. The other one thing I wanted to mention is just a fun matchup, and that's Sage Norcott and Shinya Aoki. Now, I think it's official. I'm pretty sure I saw One Championship talking about it. I saw a load of people talking about it, and that's the type of matchup I think that will get fans involved. Like, maybe the casual is the wrong word, but the hardcore MMA fan that has a lot of MMA to watch will watch that. And it's not always possible to tune in to see one or to see PFL or Bellator or Cage Wars or even, some of the UFC smaller cards or prelims or whatever these times. Sometimes you need something special. And I like fights like that. I really do, because you put on that fight and it's an interesting, fun fight. I like it, right? But then, you put Mexican on the card, or you get Soldic on his comeback. I don't know if Christian Lee, there's talks of him coming back to fight again. I think in that article even talks about him coming back to fight, or maybe Stamp is on the card. And you get people into it, and that's how you get them going. So I think it's good, that they're putting on fights like that, more MMA fights, and push the MMA people that they have, because they have some very good people there. So, that's that, I suppose, from the kind of the news from my side of it. But I think also another thing, One Championship have a lot of cards over the next while, as I just mentioned, and I think that is a massive benefit for them too, because there isn't, like, I'm very scheduled and look at my schedule all the time, but there isn't that much MMA combat sports on with the with the bigger organizations over the next while. Like, they have, this card is on December the 8th, then they have one on the 15th, another one on the 22nd, so like right up until before Christmas, and then they're back on January the 12th, so they're only away for what, 2.5-3 weeks there. They have a card again on the 28th, and then they already have dates announced for February, but there might be more in between that as well. So that is a gap in the market to fill for sure. It felt like there used to be more cards at this time of the year, and I'm not necessarily even advocating for more cards at this time of the year, but it just feels like there's a little bit less, and maybe there's something to do with with Bellator obviously and PFL joining together, but also Cage Warriors used to do the end of the year card Risen as well, and obviously Cage Warriors, I'm not sure in Risen, actually, I'll have to look that up, but Cage Warriors aren't doing it this year either, and they have one more card, and then that's that for them until the start of next year. So I think there's a chance that there's 3 cards for One Championship, where, most people, apart from, I suppose, the UFC only, are not doing cards there. So that's a bit of an advantage for them. But let's get into the biggest one. Friday, the 8th of December, one on One Fight Night 17, one on Prime 17, in the US and Canada. And you can watch it on, I think I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube here in Ireland and the UK. But check out the One Championship website as well for the listings of One Fight Night 17. I watched a whole load of Mauy Thai over the last couple of days to prepare for this, and you know what? There are some very fun fights in this, but there are also some fun characters. And I want to start with a guy in the co-main event, Luke Lessei. I've been practicing that word for the last week because I was supposed to interview him. It didn't happen. Maybe it'll happen by the time this happens. But I watched a good few of his fights and his opponent Joe Nattawut as well. But Luke Lessei, a very interesting character. His dad was and still is a big, Muay Thai coach, and he owns his own gym, and he kind of started it by himself, and there's a great documentary actually on Luke's on YouTube about him. I'd encourage anyone to watch it. It's only like 8 or 9 minutes, and it's more of like an interview, but they explain I suppose his dad's life and everything like that, and it's really heartfelt, and it's a really cool story, where his dad came from and how he became, the leading guy in that area. with Mouy Thai and how his son has become, his protege in a lot of ways, but also like a really talented guy. Watching some of his fights, he is a very talented guy, and he's got the nickname the chef because he feeds the lads teeps to the face, and he deserves that. But this is his first big fight on American American streaming to an American audience, but also over outside of America, over this card is happening in Bangkok, Thailand. So a big opportunity for him, a Thai boxer, to go over to Thailand and have a big fight, and the place, I suppose, where it all began for his dad, his family business, and what he's doing himself as well. And the fight itself, like, Joe Nattawut is a good guy. He's been around, for a long time now, and it's a big test to put him into, I suppose, straight away. He has been in there with a lot of guys like Saenchai, kickboxing against him, but kickboxing against the likes of Alizov as well, and he's been fighting in the likes of lion fights, but also won championship for a good few years now between both Muay Thai and kickboxing. So like you watch his game and you think power, you think accuracy, you think waiting for kind of that one shot to land, and there's a few fighters like that on this card, whereas Lessei is more of kind of like the rhythm, teeth to the face, low kick combination, but like picked combination from the outside type of fighter, and it's a very, very interesting matchup. Like, you look at it and you just, I've like, as someone who's, a neophyte, I suppose, to the Muay Thai game over the last few years, watching it, I'm very interested to see like the level that Luke Lessei has been fighting at and how it holds up to the level that Joe Nattawut has fought at. Like, sometimes you're fighting at a level and you're winning and you look good, but are you actually that good? Sometimes you're fighting at the exact same level, you're winning, and you are actually that good, and you take to another level and you destroy everyone there too. Like, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with Luke Lessei, but I think it's a very tough test against Joe Nattawut. I'd love to see the betting odds for this. I'm going to go, I'll give you my picks here for some of these now. Feel free to ignore my picks there, but people always want my picks. I'm going to go for Joe on that one, but a very interesting matchup, and almost one, if you're asked for a betting pick or anything like that, I'd almost avoid it to see how Luke actually, first of all, how he deals with the pressure, and second of all, how he deals with the step up, I suppose, in opponent, and the step up in quality as well. Now, he's fought some really, really good guys in the States, and I believe he's an American champion as well, so definitely a fight to watch out for, and a matchup to watch out for, and a possible star as well, I suppose, to watch out for. And that's that one. So let's talk about the main event: Roman Kryklia versus Alex Roberts, and it's two big men, two real big men. Sometimes you watch fights and go, oh, what weight class are they? There's no mistake in this one. What weight class? These boys are heavyweights. And again, it's a little bit of, I suppose, a step up for Alex Roberts, who is coming out of Australia, I believe, and a lot of his fights I've seen on YouTube and places are kind of in smaller places, not on the big stage, whereas, you look up Roman Kryklia and the first thing you see is him with the one championship belt now in kickboxing. He has won that. He was in there. He's fought some really good guys. Izazpur last time out, fought Guto in a cincha. As well, very recently, those were his last two fights, in fact, both in 2022, coming back for the first time in 2023, so he was out for a while, but he is an absolute beast of a fighter altogether. It's more a kickboxing style for him. This is a Muay Thai fight, but it's more a kickboxing style than a Muay Thai style or an MMA style, if you want to put it that way. Just an insane chin that, as his poor fight, he nearly got knocked out, but he came back, and he uses he uses what he has so well. What is he? He's a big, tall guy, and he uses that height really well. But you know what he does really well as well? He uses his speed. This guy is a proper athlete, really fast for his size. He throws combinations at a speed for a guy. It looks unnatural, right? He is so big and so tall and so fast. It just doesn't look right. And if you're an opponent of his, it must be ridiculous to actually be in there with a guy like him who can throw at the level he throws at. But he's a guy who likes to come forward and use that length or keep you at the end of that length. The real key here is to not allow him to use that length and not allow him to use the speed in the center either. That is very much easier said than done, because like he not only uses the height well, I suppose, at distance, because like when he throws those speed shots, he is throwing them at a place where he can land them in close, where it's not close for you. But he also uses the height well because he catches you in a clinch and throws those knees right up through the middle, or he throws those kind of close knees or the jump knees inside. Really, really, really good. Roberts, at the other hand, then is just big and strong. You know, I'd say if you were to have him lifting weights and stuff, Roberts would outlift him. He loves his lead left hook. It's his main shot. Lovely counter right as well. And I think it's kind of clear watching a few of his fights. That's kind of the A game for him. If you're leading, you're attacking, your left hook first. If you're going back and someone's coming at you, you're counter right. And they both work very, very well. Now, he isn't as fast, or maybe he isn't as technical. Now, it's not to say he's not a technical fighter. He absolutely is. If you're fighting at this level, you're going to be a technical fighter. But again, this seems like it's a big step up for him. Now, I'm no expert in Australian Muay Thai or anything like that. I don't know how good the level is, but it'd seem like it is a big step up for him fighting one of the best guys in the world. In my opinion, what he needs to do is impose that strength. Push him against the I believe it's going to be a ring and not a cage. So push him against it, make it tough on him, make it so he cannot get off those fast shots early, make it so he's in the second round, he's breathing heavy, and you can give a bit of space to him, because you can afford to fight with him now because you've taken away a bit of the speed and the speed advantage more I suppose importantly than the actual speed itself. That's what he needs to do, in my opinion, and then land that big shot. I don't think he will, though. I think Kryklia is the superior fighter here. I think he will land those big shots inside. He just cannot expose that chin early. If he's learned anything from the last fight, don't give Roberts a chance. Land your shots, pick your moments necessarily. Not even pick your moments, just pick your distances, because sometimes he just comes in too much for a guy who doesn't need to come in that much, the size of him. So pick that, get to a place where you are going to win the fight and make hay. And I think he will win, and I think he'll probably get the knockout there. So that's my pick for that. There's a few other fights I want to touch on as well. I'll run through a couple of them quickly, but there are a few I will look at in more detail. And bantamweight Muay Thai fight, Saemapetch against Felipe. Lobo, very, I would describe him as a rhythmic fighter, quick with his combos. He reminds me a little bit of an MMA fighter fighting Muay Thai, or the other way around. An MMA fighter fighting a Muay Thai style. He's very technical, but you see a lot of kicks in Muay Thai, obviously. I think he fights mostly with his hands, and he's kind of like, a little bit of hand fighting, a little bit of the John Jones hand up type of thing, where he is parking the distance and then attacking after that. Very quick, as I mentioned, with those combos. And he's the type of guy who's going to make it very difficult on you if you get into that sort of boxing battle with him. But it's a little bit different on Friday night, because he's fighting Saemapetch, who's a southpaw, and who also kind of looks for that one shot inside. Now, as I mentioned with Lobo, he's the combos, but they're similar in that, and I think Saemapetch more so. He's slow until he's fast, right? He kind of waits and then boom, boom, boom. But I think Saemapetch has a little bit of an advantage in speed, and he's the most important thing I think he has is the confidence in his ability to land that shot. You know, some people are like, you know, they get 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 10 minutes into a fight, and obviously this is only a 9-minute fight, but you get what I mean. And they panic, right? They're like, you know, it's almost the opposite of Yoel Romero, who'll spend 25 minutes waiting to throw the shot and never does throw it. Like, sometimes people will throw the shot before it's time to throw the shot, and that is the wrong thing to do. Saemapetch is not that. You know, he will wait. He will throw the shot when it needs to be thrown. And, you know, he's really good at it, to be honest. Like, he's really good. And the southpaw stance as well is a big advantage to him. I saw him, I watched a couple of his fights. One, he fought a fellow southpaw, and one, he fought an orthodox fighter. And the advantage he has against an orthodox fighter, you know, is a lot. It really, really, really is. Just the way he can kick that lead leg as well, in a place that kind of is tougher for the orthodox fighter to kick the leg. And you know what? I'm not too sure why, but it just seems to be that way. But yeah, I think Saemapetch will win this one. I think that power, I think he'll be able to avoid the combos because he's defensively very good as well. And I like him to land that shot. Maybe get the finish, or maybe just win a few rounds with the power. There's lightweight Mauy Thai fight then. Dmitry Menshikov against Chafi. Mouchine Chafi. Dmitry, you know, he's been in there at a very top level against Regan Ercel. Very calm, very good jab. Does start a bit slow though. You know, I watched a couple of his fights and they were mentioning it on board of them that he kind of is a bit of a slow starter. Chafi then is the opposite. You know, he's not the most technical guy. He's probably the least technical guy of all these guys in the card that I watched. But that doesn't mean he's not a good fighter. He's an offensive beast. Really good chin, and he will force Dmitry to fight. But it almost feels like the matchmaking here is to force Dmitry to fight. I think Dmitry is a better fighter. Better fighters don't always win, though. You know, the guy who wins sometimes is the guy, as we saw with Nicholas Dalby a few weeks ago, the guy who will put it on you, the guy who will work to a pace, the guy with the better cardio and the better heart. Now, does he have a better heart and better cardio and all than Dmitry? Well, we will find out. I'm gonna pick the technique though, and I'm gonna go with Dmitry Menshikov to win that one. Fight I'm really looking forward to. I think maybe the fight I'm looking forward to the most in this card is a flyweight Muay Thai fight between Walter Goncalves and Jacob Smith. Goncalves is one of those guys where he is a flawed fighter who you just love watching. You know, a Diego Sanchez back in the day, or even a Justin Gaethje at a very high level or something like that. Just so aggressive. Something I haven't seen a lot in Muay Thai. He switches stances in a kind of like a, you know, there's a lot of switching stances in Muay Thai in close, whereas he does it as like a tactic out far, you know, and he's really, really good at it. Vicious leg kicks, throws combos, all the time. But he's interesting, Goncalves. He throws combos, but it almost always feels like he has that one shot in mind, you know? So if he throws the 1, 2, 3, 4, it's actually the 3 he's looking for. So 1, 2, and 4 are not the hardest, but 3 is hard, you know? He's one of those, and that's smart. Now, when you fight that sort of rhythm, and when you fight very aggressively at the start, and maybe you're only throwing 1 of the 4 shots at 100%, but you're probably throwing 50 more shots than your opponent would. Cardio could be an issue with that. Now, will it? You know, over 9 minutes, who knows? But fighting that pace is going to be tough, especially against someone as good as Smith. You know, you saw against Superlek, I suppose the amount of shots he throws kind of went against him, or Superlek kind of with that elbow right up through the middle. And I think he's less maybe of a straight up Muay Thai guy than most of the people we see here. And I think he fights more of like that MMA style, where it is more about high output than variation or picking your shots. Where Smith, on the other hand, then, I just love his jab. I think he has a beautiful jab, lovely left hooks, very powerful upper body, and brave as well. Like, he went toe to toe with Rodtang, throwing shots inside. Very left hand heavy though, I would say. He switches to southpaw. I mentioned earlier about Goncalves, the way he switches to southpaw, and Smith is the opposite. The way he switches is kind of like the inside switch. and he throws this kind of fencing left hand, and it's kind of, I don't know what you would call it, if it's a jab or a backhand, but it's like neither. It's like a middle punch, and he pulls it back as if he's going to switch stances, and he just like fencing where they like on guard, that where they just catch you. It's like that. It's very hard to see it coming because you don't know if it's going back to get into a southpaw stance or if it's going forward to turn into a jab, and he almost catches you mid-step with it, and it's a lovely shot, a really, really, really lovely shot. I find it hard again to pick a winner in this one. You look at Goncalves and you think everything he does is so effective, but then he gets caught and he gets knocked out, and it doesn't always end well for him. And I wonder will that be the case again here? He's of his of his high level fights in one championship, he's lost 4 out of 5. Smith has only had that one championship fight against Rodtang yet, but he did well with that. Got the decision with Rodtang, but lost it. This is obviously a big change in quality here, but I'll go with Smith, but not with any great conviction or anything there. I do like his style. I do think he's a better fighter, but Goncalves is an absolute animal as well. Then we have a very interesting fight between Edgar Tabares and Johan Ghazali in the flyweight Mauy Thai division. Ghazali is a young lad. He's only 17 years of age, I believe. I think he was 16 in his last fight, and he is a very, very, very good fighter. We saw Tabares fighting recently with Rodtang as well, and it didn't go so well for him. He's more of kind of an old school Muay Thai guy, stands in the center and kind of throws everything from the one spot. Not much in the way of footwork compared to some of the other guys, but loves to spin. Not the most athletic guy in the world, but lots of caged Muay Thai experience, as I said, bringing in there at Rodtang. But Johan in on the other side, no feeling out process. It's almost the opposite. You see a lot of Muay Thai guys, maybe, the first round is that feeling out process. Not with him. But and when I say the opposite, I mean the opposite. He kind of goes hell for leather and then has the feeling out process after that. Then slows it down a little bit, and then starts to grow, starts jabbing more, looks for the high kicks and the low kicks as well. Very good kicking at all different distances. Good defensively, Stu. That step in right hand that he throws, but the step out kind of right hand that he throws as well to avoid it. I love that. So what I mean by that is, right, he's out far, fighting out of the southpaw stance. He comes in with the right hand and he gets straight back out. But when he hits inside, he goes out, in and out again. So like the first one is almost a step in right hand. The second one is a step out right hand. Even though they're both step in right hands, but you get what I hope you get what I mean. They're almost always in twos, and if they aren't in twos, they're not too far apart. Let's put it that way. I really like this guy, young guy, very, very, very exciting, and a guy who I think in the future could be a potential star for one championship. He's won all 3 fights he's had in one championship, all in 2023 as well. So big opportunity for him. Tabares, he has held belts in other places before, but he's lost his couple of fights in one championship now, been knocked out in both of them. So look, it's a big opportunity for Ghazali against the guy who's been there and I suppose done it, and the type of fight you want when you're a young up and coming guy, and I suppose we'll see how that works out for him. So that's the major takeaways for me on that card. There's a couple of other fights on it as well that there wasn't a whole load of tape out there on. There is Denis Puric against Tran Nhat, and then Ellis Barbosa against one of the Saenchai fighters, Thongpoon. So the bits I did see of Puric, a good technical fighter against Nhat, who looked to me as a flyweight very, very speedy. I didn't get a whole load on them or the other two guys either, but you know, you're putting on 125 or 120 pound Mauy Thai fights, and they're probably going to be fun. So check out them and tune in for them as well. So we will leave it there. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope I did okay with my Muay Thai breakdowns there, but I'm sure the people in the comment section will let me know anyway. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Sheehan Show. My name is Sheehan for SureDog.com, and I'll see you all next time.